nationals, including students in the Ukraine. Of these, about 4,000 have since left the country. We have taken a number of measures to facilitate flights out of the country. This includes removing the cap on the number of passengers that could fly out of Ukraine that was imposed by the civil aviation authorities of both countries. There was a 440 numbers that could fly out every week. That cap was removed. We also ensured that the number of flights were augmented rapidly, about twice a week to about 2 flights a day. And that enabled us to get at least 4,000 of our citizens and students out. We should also remember that there were a number of other options available through flights to Dubai and Istanbul and other places from Kyiv. Our embassy in Ukraine continues to be functional, is rendering all assistance possible to Indian nationals there, notwithstanding the fairly complicated and evolving situation that we find ourselves in. The embassy has issued a number of advisories in recent days. Today itself, the embassy has issued 3 advisories, and these provide advice to Indian nationals on the situation as it evolves, travel towards safer places, including western parts of the country that will facilitate the exit by road and other means, safety precautions that our citizens could take, etc. Our ambassador has also sent a personal message to all Indian citizens in Ukraine, providing advice. We are consulting universities, student contractors in the process of providing for the welfare and safety of our students. A control room has been set up in MEA. Now this control room has been functional for the past 7 or 8 days, but we have seriously augmented the strength. We have over 20 officers that are manning these control rooms, this control room in the Ministry of External Affairs on a 24/7 basis. Just to give an example, till now and just today, we have answered 980 calls and dealt with some 850 emails that were sent to this control room. Our embassy in Kiev has also set up a helpline, 24/7 helpline center. The other measure that we have taken is that we have dispatched Russian-speaking officers to Kiev and to the countries neighboring Ukraine. Russian-speaking because the language there is Russian. If you're not Russian-speaking, your utility is far more limited. Some of these officers are already reached and are functioning. Some will be reaching shortly. We have also asked our embassies, our ambassadors in the countries neighboring Ukraine, and I mentioned these, Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary, to send teams of their officers to the border areas with Ukraine to facilitate the exit of Indian nationals from Ukraine, to permit them to come into their countries, so where they can be safely evacuated back to India. And MEA teams are on their way as we speak to Zahoni border post in Hungary, Krakwiez land border in Poland, Visny Nemke in Slovak Republic, and Suceava land border in Romania. We have also asked some of our officers to go across and set up camp offices in Ukraine, close to the border. 2 of the places we have identified are Lviv, which is close to Poland, and Chernivtsi, which is close to Romania. And here, I think, will be sort of facilitation points. Now, our embassy has, it's a very complicated, very evolving situation. It's obviously, certain areas there's conflict. We can't have a single sort of advisory that fits all situations. We have to evolve. We have to see where we are and how and which part of the country you're located and what the situation is. Generally, if we are advising that if you find yourself in a certain difficult situation, then you should remain in secure areas and shelters, etc. If you can, you move westwards towards the borders with some of the countries I mentioned. And these advisories will be continuously issued. These helplines are for that purpose, so that depending on the situation, that advice can be given. One important step that we have taken, because a number of our students were reluctant to leave because the authorities, university authorities had said that the classes must be offline. We have now persuaded all the universities and institutions to allow online classes, and therefore students can actually leave without having to face the strain of not being able to or missing out on their classes. As I said, the situation on the ground is difficult and is rapidly evolving. I want to take this opportunity to assure all Indian citizens, including students in Ukraine and their family members, that we will take all possible steps to bring you back safe and sound, bring your wards back safe and sound. Prime Minister has specifically stated that the Ministry of External Affairs should do everything possible in coordination, of course, with other ministries involved to ensure that facilitation on the lines that I discussed, helplines, control rooms, officers available, shelters, accommodation, facilitation in every manner is done for our citizens. We, of course, had a few citizens outside our embassy also. I'm told that at least all of them, I'm talking about numbers of about 200 to 250 of our citizens, have been accommodated in schools in the area. The embassy has been asked to facilitate their requirements, and depending on the situation, we will have them evacuated westwards. As you know, this government has been very focused when it comes to the welfare of Indian citizens in difficult situations around the world. We have had a lot of experience in facilitating and arranging such evacuations. The Vande Bharat mission, which is the largest repatriation exercise of its kind, was undertaken during the peak of COVID times. More recently, we had Op Devi Shakti, which is involving the evacuation of Indian nationals from Afghanistan, from a conflict situation. We will obviously have to take into account that every situation presents its own challenges, and we have to deal with it accordingly. So perhaps I'll stop here and see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Please introduce yourselves before taking the questions. Maybe I'll start with you right here. I saw your hand go first, and then we'll...
Sir, I'm Okhlaya, someone from Sansar TV. Russia and US both are our strategic partners, and in this point of time, are we playing any role talking to both US and Russia to stop the war and create a situation when there can be a congenial atmosphere in the region?
Take a few more. A couple of more. Yeah, please. Come back.
So would you like to make any comments on the sanctions being imposed on Russia? Does that bring more difficulty for us as far as our military acquisitions are concerned? Thank you. Nainima from the trade.
My question is regarding India's consistent position when it comes to countries' territorial sovereignty. Regarding this invasion, a country's territorial sovereignty is being violated. What does New Delhi has to say on that? I'm Siddhan from Beyond.
Fourth.
Meghna from DD News. Sir, some states have also set up control rooms. So is the MEA coordinating with the state control rooms as well? Where do those people who reach out to state control rooms, does it reach the MEA? How does it work?
I'll take one last one. I'll come back to you.
So, Hasini Heather from the Hindu. Foreign Secretary, we know that, as you said, there have been conversations between the EAM, the European Union counterparts, the UK as well. I wanted to just touch on Nainima and Siddhan's questions on the UN Security Council resolution that the US says it is going to bring. Has India seen a draft of the resolution that is coming about? So far, India has the statements India has made have not criticized Russia, have referred to legitimate security interests of all parties, and has not actually affirmed the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So I just wanted to know if India's position on any of these is likely to change given this UNSC resolution.
So let us start with Akhilesh's question, which is, whether we are playing any role with our strategic partners. It is true that India has maintained the best of relations with all countries concerned, whether it's the United States, whether it's Russia, or whether it's the European Union. We have been in touch with all parties concerned, as you can imagine, both as a member of the Security Council, as a country with a lot at stake in that region. as a country with so many of its citizens in a vulnerable zone. We have been in close touch with all concerned. External Affairs Minister was in Europe recently, where he's had a number of meetings with his interlocutors. This evening, as I said, Prime Minister will be speaking to President Putin. External Affairs Minister himself has spoken to a number of ministers from the European Union, and will be speaking to those ministers, those of his counterparts who are from neighboring countries, which is very important, primarily for our own citizens and their safe evacuation out of Ukraine. So our focus in the UN Security Council has always been on de-escalation of tensions, on diplomatic dialogue as the only way forward, and we've also emphasized on the existing agreements, the Minsk agreements, the Normandy format. We've also obviously placed the highest importance to the safety and security of our nationals in the Ukraine in our statements in the UN Security Council. And so in all of this, I think we have, as I said, maintained that people need to talk to each other, the parties need to be engaged, and if there's anything that we can do to facilitate that engagement, we are more than happy to do. And I think, as we go along, we will try and be as helpful as possible. Nayanima's question on sanctions on Russia, you are aware that certain unilateral sanctions were already existing as far as Russia was concerned. Some additional sanctions have been imposed by the United States, by the EU, by Australia, Japan, the UK, among others. But this is an evolving situation, as I said, and we have to see what sort of impact these sanctions will have on our own interests. Clearly, we need to study this carefully, because any sanctions will have impact on our existing relationship. I think it would only be correct to acknowledge that factor, but the actual impact of the sanctions needs to be studied carefully, and we will do that. Siddhant, I think you spoke about a country's sovereignty. I think that question was also asked by Suhasini when you talked about our position in the Security Council, the possibility of a UNSC resolution that would be tabled on the evolving situation. We have seen a draft resolution. I'm told that that would undergo considerable changes. We will wait to see the shape that this resolution takes before we can pronounce ourselves in the position that we would take on this issue. So it is, as I said, an evolving situation both on the ground and in the United Nations. We are at the cutting edge of many of the issues, many of the areas where these issues will be discussed and will be considered by the international community, and we will certainly play our due role in that regard. Yes, yes. So, excuse me. I think Neeta had asked this question about state control rooms. I can tell you that a number of chief secretaries of states have spoken to me. Obviously, states are concerned about students, about citizens from their states who are in Ukraine. We are coordinating very closely in that regard. It's only fair to tell you that we have set up, control rooms and teams all over. We have set up control rooms in Hungary, in Poland, in Slovakia, and Romania. All this information is out in the public domain. But early in the day, whoever contacted me, I immediately sent out the details to them in our state governments. Our external publicity division has put all this out in the public domain, and all this is information that our states can use. We are, as I said, in close touch with all concerned who have a stake in this issue, whether it is parents, whether it is family members, or whether it is state governments, members of parliament, those who are concerned about this. And I just mentioned, Prime Minister chaired a meeting, is chairing a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security. They are examining all aspects of the situation, in particular, what sort of assistance, what sort of support that we can render to our citizens in this time of need. And clearly, involving the state governments in this activity is a part of that effort.
Thank you, sir. Next round of question I'll take here. Yeah, then I'll come to you.
सर मैं मनीष हूँ TV9 भारतवर्ष से। मेरा सवाल ये है कि बहुत सारे पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स भी ये कह रहे हैं कि अगर हम लोगों ने थोड़ा पहले एक्शन लिया होता, जैसा आपने खुद ही बताया कि 1 महीने पहले ही हमने डेटा कलेक्ट कर लिया था, लेकिन एडवाइजरी 15 फरवरी को निकाली थी। तो क्या अगर हमने थोड़ा पहले एक्शन लिया होता तो शायद हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा स्टूडेंट्स को निकाल पाते और अभी हालात थोड़े बेहतर होते। एंड चूंकि आप लैंड बॉर्डर का सर आप डिस्कस कर रहे थे, थोड़ा डिटेल अगर दे देंगे कि बच्चे कैसे उन चारों नेबर कंट्री जो लैंड बॉर्डर्स हैं वहाँ तक कैसे पहुँचेंगे, क्या वो रूट सेफ है?
Sir, Shruti Ranjan from the Bloomberg, sir, two quick questions. One, sir, what is the kind of message we are likely to carry to Russia when the Prime Minister is expected to speak? And secondly, sir, we have heard the Ukrainian ambassador to India saying that they're disappointed with India's stand. Is there a reaction to that or a clarification to that, sir?
Sir, Maha Siddiqui from CNN News 18. Sir, is the call by the Prime Minister to the Russian President Vladimir Putin being made at the request of Ukraine, or is India making this call because India at the moment is also a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council?
Sir, over here. Thanks now, Srinjoy. Sir, you said Prime Minister is speaking with the President of Russia, Mr. Putin, tonight. Is he going to make any other calls to any other major leaders either today, tonight, or sometime tomorrow morning?
संदीप न्यूज़ 18 इंडिया से। सर, नॉर्मली सिचुएशन में जब इवैक्यूएशन होता है तो एयरफोर्स को भी इन्वॉल्व किया जाता है। क्या ऐसी सिचुएशन है कि एयरफोर्स को भी इस इवैक्यूएशन में जो है आप लोग शामिल करने जा रहे हैं?
सर, हाँ, पहले मैं मनीष जी का प्रश्न का उत्तर देना चाहता हूँ। ये स्थिति जो हम देख रहे हैं ये काफ़ी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड सिचुएशन है। इसमें जो अगर हम देख सकते थे कि कैसे इवॉल्व होता था तो शायद और भी देशों जो इन्वॉल्व हैं इसमें वो भी उसी हालत से उसी प्रकार से देख सकते थे। तो ये मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि ये इवॉल्विंग सिचुएशन बनने के कारण से एग्जैक्ट एक्शन जो आपने कहा, मतलब बाद में जो आप अगर हम रेट्रोस्पेक्ट में देखें तो हमें लगेगा कि एक्शन पहले भी ले सकते थे, पर सिचुएशन कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है और इवॉल्विंग है। उसी हिसाब से हमने अपने मतलब प्रिपरेशंस किए थे। ये भी देखना होगा कि काफ़ी हमारे जो स्टूडेंट्स थे उनको एडवाइजरी देने के बावजूद भी वो देख रहे थे कि अगर क्लासेस मिस होंगे, अगर क्लासेस ऑफलाइन होंगे तो क्लासेस उसके भी मतलब नतीजा होगा उनके ऊपर, और क्या ऑप्शंस थे उनके, क्या उपाय थे। तो इसमें हमने काफ़ी इनके साथ हम इनके साथ संपर्क में थे, इनको एडवाइस देते रहे, और जैसे मैंने कहा जो वहाँ से निकलना चाहते थे वो निकल गए, जिसको फैसिलिटेट करना था हमने फैसिलिटेट करवाया। और एडवाइजरीज भी अगर आप देखें 15 तारीख को जो एडवाइजरी इशू हुआ था जिसमें हमने कहा कि यू कुड इंडियन सिटीजन, नॉन एसेंशियल इंडियन सिटीजन कैन लीव द कंट्री, तो हमने काफ़ी एडवांस नोटिस दिया था इसमें। तो मेरे ख्याल से जो सिचुएशन आज है वो इवॉल्विंग सिचुएशन के कारण से है, और ये भी हम कह सकते हैं कि जो हमारे जो नागरिकों का सुरक्षा है, उनके वेलबींग है, और उनके जो इवैक्यूएशन के जो अरेंजमेंट्स हैं वो हम पूरी तरह संभाल लेंगे, और इसमें कोई घबराने की बात नहीं होगी। और जो सेफ रूट्स हैं जैसे आपने कहा वो भी आइडेंटिफाई हो गए। मैंने आपको बताया था कि बाय रोड अगर कीव से आपको जाना हो तो पोलैंड के लिए 9 घंटे का रास्ता है और रोमेनिया के लिए करीब 12 घंटे का रास्ता है। तो वो रास्ता भी मैप आउट हो गया है, और वो रास्ते में जो पॉइंट्स मैंने बताया जैसे कि लिवीव है, चेरनोवित्स्की है, वहाँ भी हमने हमारे टीम्स जो रशियन स्पीकिंग ऑफिसर है वो टीम्स हम भेज रहे हैं, वो वहाँ पे होंगे, ताकि वहाँ से भी जो मदद और सहायता हम दे सकते हैं हमारे नागरिकों को वो हम ज़रूर देंगे। विथ रिगार्ड टू आई थिंक सुधीर रंजन जी's क्वेश्चन, about message to or the conversation between our PM and Russian President, I think it would be difficult to let us say guess in advance as to what nature of that conversation will be. I think we could certainly say that President Putin would provide his perspective on the situation, that he would brief the Prime Minister, and I think that conversation would obviously be around the situation that we see today. But beyond that, to try and second guess what would be the conversation, I think right now would be not correct. But needless to say, as the conversation takes place, we will be keeping you informed of the nature of that conversation. There was a question about the same. I think you had asked about the disappointment expressed by the Ukrainian ambassador. Honestly speaking, we have been in touch with him. We have been in touch with many of our diplomatic colleagues. I did not see any disappointment that he had expressed as far as we are concerned, and we will certainly, be, as I said, in touch at very, very high levels. The External Affairs Minister is expected to speak to the Ukrainian Foreign Minister this evening, tonight, and obviously, we are speaking to all concerned. So I don't think there should be any sense that we are speaking to one party and not to other. I think Maha's question was again, whether the call, I think the call was in the behest, you said, of Ukraine. Well, I mean, the conversation is taking place because of the reasons I mentioned. We have a stake in the situation. We are a concerned party, as both a country that has close relations with Russia, with Ukraine, with the European Union, with all concerned. We also have stakes in the region, economic stakes. We have people involved. Our citizens are there. We are members of the UN Security Council. I mean, all of these factors are relevant to that conversation that is taking place. Sanjoy, you said, are there any other calls expected? I think, again, it's premature. Obviously, there will be calls in the days to come. There will be conversations, and we will be open to any such interaction with any of our colleagues in the international community. And संदीप जी, आपने पूछा कि ऐसे स्थितियों में इंडियन एयरफोर्स को सूचना दी जाती है. आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा. हमने मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ डिफेंस के साथ संपर्क में हैं. उनको हमने पूरी सूचना दी है कि क्या स्थिति है और क्या इवॉल्विंग सिचुएशन है, और हमने ये भी कहा है कि अगर ज़रूरत पड़े तो हमारी एयरलिफ्ट कैपेसिटी की मतलब प्रोविजन रखना होगा उनको, और अगर ऐसी स्थिति हो तो हमारी एयरफोर्स की एयरक्राफ्ट भी वहाँ पे जा सकती है. पर हमारी और भी उपाय हैं, जैसे कि हमारे कमर्शियल एयरक्राफ्ट है, तो ऑल ऑप्शंस आर ऑन द टेबल.
So thank you very much for that. I think we'll you have one. Okay, we'll take second question, please. Just take the last couple of questions.
नीरज राजपूत, ABP. सर, जिस तरह की परिस्थितियां बन रही हैं, हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि रशिया किस तरह से इमर्ज करके आ रहा है, और रशिया की जो संबंध हैं चीन के साथ बहुत अच्छे संबंध हैं, और पाकिस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री भी आज रूस में ही थे. तो ये क्या इस यूक्रेन क्राइसिस के बाद जो नया वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर होगा, तो वो भारत के लिए किसी तरह से कोई चिंता का सबब बन सकता है? किस तरह से देखते हैं आप इस नए वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर को?
Okay. Okay, last question, definitely.
क्या
नाम
जयप्रकाश तरीके क्या अपने विदेश मंत्री रूस के विदेश मंत्री से भी बात कर रहे हैं, या बात करने की योजना है आज?
तो एक तो मैं जयप्रकाश जी को सीधा बता सकता हूं कि जब प्रधानमंत्री की बात हो रही है रूस के राष्ट्रपति के साथ, तो यही हाईएस्ट लेवल पे बात चल रही है. न्यू वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर जो आपने कहा, जो नीरज जी ने कहा, ज़रूर स्थिति बदल गया है. ग्लोबली टेंशन्स, तनाव की हमने देखा है कि काफ़ी मतलब इसमें स्थिति काफ़ी गंभीर हो गई है. ये परिस्थिति में हम क्या कर सकते हैं? हमारे जितने भी ऑप्शंस हैं वो सब खुले हैं. सभी के साथ हमारे संबंध हैं, सभी के साथ हमारे संपर्क भी है, और जो करना है हमारे हित में, हमारे देश के हित में और हमारे नागरिकों के इंटरेस्ट में हम जरूर करेंगे.
So thank you very much for your presence here today, sir. Glad you could make out time from today to brief the general community. I also would like to thank the presence of Dr. Adarsh Swaika, Joint Secretary looking after Eurasia desk in the division, who joined us during the presentation. Thank you particularly to all of you to joining us so late in the evening. Good evening.
And let me assure you that we will keep you posted of developments. It is not a one-off thing. I'm trying to tell you that it is an evolving situation. Things could happen. It's also complicated. And we will certainly try and keep you posted with the maximum transparency. Already we have, as I said, we are issuing advisories, we are issuing statements almost on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis, and we will be in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Good night.